All right. Thanks for joining us here. And with us, we have the WildChat, the Northwestern Big Banter podcast. Guys, thanks for joining us, and we're excited to do this crossover with you.
Thrilled to be
I
here.
Yeah, thanks for joining. I have one question for you guys. Were you as disappointed as we were to see that this was a night game, just with how stacked the college football lineup is this week? I mean, they put us on the same time as uh, Iowa, Penn State, and then also Notre Dame, Ohio State at the same time.
It's a little brutal. I would have liked to get the game over early in the day, see Northwestern lose by however many points it's going to be, and then gone back to my dorm room and just watch college football the rest of the day. But you know what? I guess we get the primetime game, 6:30. But night games are always fun in Evanston, so that'll definitely be a fun aspect to what will
Sure.
hopefully be a little bit more of a competitive game than we've seen in recent years.
I'm a Miami
Yeah.
fan as well, so they play at 2:30. So I'm just excited that they're not playing at the exact same time
Okay.
again. So
There you
we'll
go.
watch both of them
Who does Miami have this week?
at the Temple. So that should be an easy 4-0 for them,
Okay.
hopefully.
Yeah.
Good thing though is Colorado actually plays early in the day, and I mean this team is taking over the entire national media, and I'm totally on the Colorado bandwagon. So at least I get to watch them. So that's
You know,
another positive.
I am very fascinated with what's going on there as well, but I don't need it shoved in my face every single commercial break that we have. That's my takeaway from that. But
Fair
no,
enough.
it's good. Yeah. All right. So I'll start first, if you guys don't mind, asking you some questions just to get the Gopher fans a little bit more info about you guys that we probably don't know at the moment. So, we know the offseason that Northwestern had kind of leading up. Fitzgerald let go basically after that situation. And David Braun steps in as the interim head coach. Do you guys feel that he's coaching for a chance to be, the full time guy, or is he clearly just a placeholder at this moment?
I could start on that one. I think it's hard to say with only a couple games, in the bag. I mean, have we been performing that great? No, but I think that based on the circumstances, it's really hard to make that sort of judgment call so early on in the season. I mean, I would love to see Braun take us for a couple more wins. I know he said he wanted to win the Big Ten West this year, and that's not looking like it's going to be the case at all. I mean, I would love it if some miracle happened and we happen to just win every game for the rest of the season, but I highly doubt that. So I think it's definitely, in my opinion at least, I don't know if Adam and Dylan will agree, but for me, it's a wait and see kind of game. We need to see how he calls the defense in the future. I mean, against UTEP, our defense looked okay, but again, that was against UTEP, and against Duke, we didn't look so hot. So I think it's a wait and see game. I think we have to see what he does with the defense. I think maybe he'll rearrange a little bit. Maybe he'll, after Duke, have some takeaways, especially regarding, defense, O line, the areas where we struggle. So crossing our fingers that it'll go better, but I think we have to see how he does for the rest of the season, especially in conference play.
Sure.
I think another thing as well is just how desirable is the Northwestern head coaching job to someone outside of the program. If you do go ahead and decide not to keep David Braun as your head coach after this year, you have to be confident that you're going to be able to find someone else that wants to come in that would be better than David Braun and wants to take over. And I'm just not quite sure how easy that's going to be depending on how this year turns out, which is why I do think there is a decent chance that David Braun is, coaching for his ability to remain the head coach into future years.
Okay.
Yeah, that's actually a great point that you made because one of my questions was going to be, after this season, what kind of coach are you going to look at? Because, Fitzgerald was there, as a player in the 90s and was the head coach from 2006 to 2022. And obviously, he was the kind of coach that loved Northwestern. And I think for schools like in Northwestern and Minnesota, you want to hire a guy that's going to be there to stay and kind of take it to the next level. And I think something that Kurt and I could agree on is with head coach PJ Fleck, we don't really know if he has his roots here. And if something big comes up, who knows what he's going to do. And so I guess, is that kind of what you are looking for in a head coach? Someone that's really dedicated to a Northwestern and here to stay for the long run?
I guess that was kind of, I mean, what Northwestern's been about, like you mentioned, with Fitz. But this is a new Northwestern, and this is kind of a situation, really an unprecedented situation where I don't really know if anyone can expect or should be expecting anything in the next couple years, rather than just see kind of where the program goes. If this whole David Braun thing works out and, Northwestern wins, 4 or 5 games this year, which seems unlikely, but hey, maybe they win 3 games and then he gets a 1-year deal or something like that. Kind of like a prove it, see if you can do it again and build on it. But it's really just kind of to see how this whole experiment goes, because there's no roadmap, there's no game plan. I think for Northwestern, it's really just see and wait until something kind of materializes. But definitely, I think there needs to be some sort of sense of a coach that can stay here and build the program from the ground up. And I think David Braun has the chance to do it right now. So it'll be interesting to see if he has the success in the locker room to be able to do that.
Sure. Yeah, and just as an outsider looking in, I always get curious, with all the change happening around the college football landscape. We're basically moving towards 2 mega conferences. It seems like schools want as much stability as possible. So I didn't know if that would play into maybe Braun getting the chance, but it sounds like he does have a realistic chance at potentially staying on full term and not just being a placeholder for now. But yeah, interesting. Okay, so maybe moving on more towards the actual football side of things here. Just from an outside perspective, because I feel like the Big Ten West in general gets overlooked nationally a lot. So I just wanted you guys as Northwestern fans and the people that are covering them to give us maybe what's something that this team currently does better or is actually decent at that maybe they're not getting the attention or love for.
Dylan, you had something earlier.
Well, yeah. So I think the one big thing here for Northwestern is probably their wide receiver group. You've got probably your top 3 guys of AJ Henning, Cam Johnson, and Bryce Kurtz. And I think those 3 guys are definitely serviceable. And I think, Northwestern's wide receivers aren't talked about just because nothing Northwestern's really talked about as being decent. And I think they're definitely overlooked because we have different opinions on this. But in my opinion, the quarterback play has just not been anywhere near as good as it needs to be. So I think that while the wide receivers have been good, getting separation, getting open, they just haven't been able to be hit in target. And I think that's really causing them to be overlooked. And it's something that's been overshadowed and something that's just a reason why they're not winning football games, because they haven't been able to get the ball, but they've been open a lot of the time.
But I also think it's even more than just this season with this Northwestern team. Northwestern historically is kind of known as a run-based, run-heavy kind of offense. And I guess kind of the Big Ten is as a conference in general. In recent history, I guess guys like Justin Jackson or Evan Hall, even last year for Northwestern, those guys were like the staple of these offenses. Cam Porter he's serviceable. He's fine. But he doesn't have that burst of an Evan Hall from last year, and that's kind of been something lacking. Showed it a little bit against UTEP, but this team really hasn't ever been like this big wide receiver, university. Last year, Malik Washington was the leader in receptions. He transferred to Virginia, and in the offseason, there was a big question mark of who's going to step up. And because there didn't really seem like anyone that was really going to take the reins, they brought in AJ Henning, brought in Cam Johnson, both transfers. And AJ Henning, he's looked really, really good. The burst and just the natural ability. This guy was at Michigan last year, didn't get that many opportunities behind a loaded wide receiver room there, but got some opportunities as a kickoff and return specialist. And he's really showing that speed and just that burst in this offense. Caught a touchdown pass last week against Duke, but more importantly, really big part of the run game too. And I really like Cam Johnson overall. I think he's just overall a very solid receiver. Doesn't do anything spectacularly, but has good hands, good route running, and is a really nice second option. And also, Dylan kind of mentioned this a little bit before, but the quarterback play, I think it's more about the offensive line struggles, to be honest. When Ben Bryant has time in the pocket, he's accurate and he's looked good. And specifically his connection with Bryce Kurtz. They've been on the same page a lot since Kurtz came back, missed the first game due to injury, but came back in the second one against UTEP, and they've been on the same page. So I think these wide receivers, really big building block for this offense to kind of build around some success this season.
Nice. Yeah. No, I'm guilty. I don't think of Northwestern as a pass-heavy team at all. But most of the West isn't. So
fair enough.
Yeah. So I guess I'll let you guys ask anything since we got the first couple questions in. If you guys wanted to run anything by us.
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing for me right now is, we kind of just alluded to the Northwestern quarterbacks. Definitely want to talk about Kaliakmanis over there at Minnesota, and kind of a tough game for him last week. There's been some growing pains. Where's like the level of kind of what's going on here from inside the Minnesota fan base?
You want it first, Spencer? Go.
Yeah, we kind of addressed this yesterday on our podcast a little bit. I think we're all in agreement that we think that Athan has the capability of being a really good quarterback. You know, he's in his second year, redshirt sophomore. Definitely has the abilities. He's a little more mobile than Tanner Morgan was. He still needs to learn how to kind of get down when he's sliding. But other than that, I like his arm. I kind of like what he does when he's on the run. The only thing is, you know, we start the first game against Nebraska throwing, 44 times, getting an idea of how he's going to perform. The following game, we run the ball for 40 plus times. Don't even show anything. Don't throw the ball. And I think that was in preparations for North Carolina. But with a new quarterback, a new offensive line, and pretty much new weapons surrounding Athan, I think that you have to utilize that and get some reps in early before Big Ten play. And that was evident. It was evident against North Carolina. Couldn't really get anything going through the air because I just don't think the chemistry is there. And I personally blame that on the coaching. As a coach, you have to understand that you don't have that chemistry built yet. So against Eastern Michigan, who's not a Power 5 team, that's a great opportunity to kind of open the playbook and kind of see what you're good at, see what your weapons can do that surround Athan, and give Athan that confidence to really sling the ball. So yeah, he had a pretty bad game against North Carolina, but I'm confident as long as the coaches really just kind of let him throw, give him the reps that he needs, in these next few days, next couple of games, I think that he can be a good quarterback. But I really just hope that the coaches allow him to do that to really improve. Otherwise, his growth is just going to kind of stunt, and he might just be a bust of a quarterback.
Yeah, just generally. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, no, go ahead.
So I know you talk about that as being a key area of improvement for the future, but I know you guys have a pretty tough schedule ahead of you. Just in general, what are some key areas that you think will be important in succeeding or at least holding some of these top 25 teams off?
Well, I kind of tweeted out after the game. There's a lot going on that goes into the passing game, but Athan was inaccurate for pretty much most of that game. He doesn't have much of a touch yet. Like everything's about 100 miles an hour that he's throwing at receivers right now. And to be fair, it was like his, seventh career start last week. So he's not, he played last season, but he still doesn't have as much experience as I think some people think just because they heard his name a little bit last year. But I think Athan is the key depending on like how well we're going to actually do. There were some media members that predicted this would kind of be a growing pain year for the Minnesota offense in general, just because we are transitioning to a little bit more, I don't want to say pass heavy compared to what we've done in the past. So if, he was up and down the Nebraska game, Eastern Michigan, like Spencer said, we didn't get to see much, not so good against North Carolina. If he can get better as the year goes on, I think the West is open enough where we can still maybe squeak in there. I know we got Michigan and Ohio State, so not gonna, be blind and see those as like two victories or anything. But I think the West is even enough where if you can get to like a final record of only 3 conference losses, so finishing 8-4 for us, that would be. I think you give yourself a chance at winning the West. So I would say it's the continued development of the passing game because the O-line, which was a question mark, has come along, and I think the defense is good. I think the defense is better than what they showed last Saturday. It was a lot of busted coverages. We weren't really getting out-athleted, I don't think, against North Carolina a whole lot. It was like a lot of we literally just didn't cover a guy running right down the field, and that typically doesn't happen under Joe Rossi too much. So for as far as what we need to do, just given the schedule, I would say it's keep developing the passing game or hoping it develops. Just it's going to ride on Athan's shoulders as much as anything. So, yeah.
You got anything, Dylan?
Do you want me to go, or do you want to ask us some more? I don't know how you want to do this.
Well, no, that's fine. My questions are kind of more about strictly our game against each other now. So I was going to ask, my next question for you guys is like, what are your keys for Northwestern to be able to win this upcoming Saturday?
I think the number one thing is this defense needs to tackle. And that kind of sounds simple and easy, but last week against Duke, that it just didn't happen. It really didn't. And even our best players, guys like Bryce Gallagher, just a star-studded linebacker for us, captain of the team past 2 years. He was missing tackles, right? Devin Turner, another guy in the secondary, another big impact player missing tackles. Tackles just they have to happen because especially against a team like Minnesota, a team that we know is going to run the ball down this Northwestern defense's throat. I mean, that's what happened last year, and it's what's going to happen this year. Minnesota's very run-heavy team, as you said, and even if this team kind of is trying to be more pass-heavy and trying to lean towards that, they're still going to run the ball, and that didn't stop. Like Northwestern's defense was like cheese last week. It was Swiss cheese. For lack of a better term, to kind of beat this point home. But I would say it's really it's the fundamental parts of defense, and it comes with tackling, comes with just pursuit of the quarterback too. That's been a problem this season, kind of pressuring the quarterback, and it's been better over the past couple weeks. But finishing those plays off and getting those sacks hasn't really happened. So I'd say defensively, those are really big things to look at.
Yeah, I agree. I think for Northwestern, it kind of just comes down to running the ball. We kind of know from Northwestern that this offense isn't going to be an offense that's going to go out there and put up, 28, 35 points on a Big Ten defense. That's just not something that I am seeing feasible. So it's going to come down to, can Northwestern's defense stop the run? They could not do that against Duke at all. It was just not even close the entire time. We saw last year. I mean, it was 31-3 against Minnesota. Mo Ibrahim just ran all over us. Can Northwestern stop that again this year? It's kind of just wait to see. Not exactly the most optimistic about that, but that's, I think, the biggest key.
Yeah, for sure. I'd agree about that as well. I don't have much to add on the defensive perspective, but I do really think that our offensive line is a big issue. That's sort of been my biggest issue with our team in the past 3 games. Our offensive line has just not been able to protect the quarterback in the pocket, which I think is really important, especially for our team when we have a quarterback situation that is not super stable and fluctuates constantly. I mean, we started 3 different guys in our game against Duke. Ben Bryant went out. Then we had Helinski for a couple plays, and it's just Sullivan doesn't look like a reliable starter either. And now we're just running up against the same problems that we had last year, where we don't have a quarterback that can throw a pass. We don't have a consistent starter. And I really think that's a key thing for our offense to be able to succeed, is to have that stability that we just do not have. So I think our O-line, our quarterback situation isn't great, but I think our O-line is really key in protecting whatever quarterback we have in the pocket. There's no way we're going to succeed without that protection.
Is there a quarterback that you feel like, do you feel Ben Bryant's your best option there? Or is it just kind of like there's too many other issues to really even?
I think Ben Bryant is the most talented quarterback on the roster right now, and I think he's the most capable given the circumstances. I mean, I'll give you the rundown through each of the options. You've got Bryant, who's prototypical kind of pocket passer. He's a little bit mobile too, and I'd like to see him use his legs more. I think that he has that running ability, but kind of shies away from it. But it's really when he gets pressured, he kind of freezes and makes mistakes. So it's up to the offensive line to give him a little bit more time, but he's going to make some quicker reads. Then you've got Brendan Sullivan, who stepped in last year for Ryan Helinski after he got injured and then kind of lost the starting job. Sullivan, the best way to describe Sullivan's game, I'd say, is every time that Northwestern picks up a first down, it feels like a miracle, just because he's very erratic, really good scrambler, really, really good scrambler, but that kind of athletic ability kind of overtakes his ability to be a quarterback. It's almost like you put in high school like that star lacrosse player at quarterback and just let him cook pretty much. That's kind of how it feels a little bit with Brendan Sullivan. And then you've got Ryan Helinski. I don't think he's really a capable option. He's kind of a worse version of Ben Bryant in every way possible. And then you have Jack Lausch, who's actually a sophomore quarterback who's getting some reps and getting some game action too, but really Northwestern's utilized him for his legs and utilizing that athletic ability to get outside the pocket and run and pick up first down, pick up touchdowns. So I really like him as kind of like a gadget piece, but he's not really an option at starter currently.
Sure.
But it'll be interesting maybe in a year or 2 years to see how he develops.
Okay.
I'm going to flip it right back around to you, though. What do you really see from this Minnesota team that are must-haves to be successful against Northwestern?
So PJ referenced in his press conference that they're not going to shy away from the passing game, even though with how much it struggled. I'm curious how much he's going to stick to that, because he's got a very conservative tendency. And Darius Taylor is a great running back, true freshman running back. He's second right now, I think, in the Big Ten, and he had 1 carry the first game for 3 yards. So he's second in the Big Ten in basically just 2 games. So I'm wondering how quickly he turns to Darius Taylor to kind of basically do the brunt of the force there for us to try and move the ball down the field, which I think is kind of what's going to end up happening. So for me, it's going to be being able to run the football, because I just don't think the passing game is going to be at a point where you can rely on it right now. So even if we feel as Minnesota fans that our receivers have maybe a better athletic advantage on the outside right now, because we are high on the receivers, it's just not in sync right now with the passing game. So for me, for offense, it's going to be able to run the football and maybe set up some easier throws for Athan, because I don't think you can quite put this one on him yet, especially a night game on the road in the Big Ten. So I think it's being able to run the football.
Yeah, I second that. It would be cool if, they did open the playbook a little bit. It's kind of hard, in my opinion, to gauge the Northwestern secondary. I know, in previous games, Rutgers, I think UTEP, and then also against Duke, it looks like the quarterback's decent numbers, but it was mostly running the ball. Obviously last week against Duke, they just kind of ran the football and had some success there. So I don't really know what to expect from the secondary. But I know that the Gophers do have athletes, and I would like to see them maybe spread out a little bit more. But, if the running game is going to be successful, I think that you just got to kind of roll with it. And so obviously that starts up front. Going to Northwestern for years, our podcast has been saying it. Northwestern's a tricky school. You kind of go down there and, you play on that grass field. There's a few fans in the stands. It's kind of easy to, fall asleep if you're an opposing team when you go in there. And that can kind of sneak up on you, and Northwestern can easily pull out a win. So I think just staying engaged, staying physical, running the football, being physical up front on both sides of the football are the keys to winning the game.
Yeah, I sorry. I was just going to add one more thing on the defensive side of the ball. I'm slightly more encouraged if your offensive line's struggling, just because our D line kind of has been better this year at getting at the quarterback, which is something we haven't been able to do in the past, I should say. And so that is also my key on our defensive side of the ball, is being able to get after your quarterback. So, yeah, that's all I was going to add to that point.
I think that's definitely something to keep track of, because we've done a terrible job really kind of protecting our quarterbacks outside of UTEP, which is tough. To your point about Northwestern secondary, I would say that really before the Duke game against Rutgers and UTEP, Northwestern did a really good job limiting the massive explosive plays. Teams were picking up yardage on us, but they weren't, plays that were over 20 yards. They were quick, 4, 5, 6 yard plays that just took really long times, but teams were able to kind of drive against us. Against Duke was able to kind of, push down the field a little bit better, had more explosive plays. But I think our secondary does a decent job, keeping the ball in front of them, but they do give up a decent amount of stuff really underneath.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very fair to say. I'm very curious, though, who is the X factor against Northwestern? Who is the one player that needs to have a big game? Is it the freshman running back who's been on a tear, or is it more of a defensive asset to kind of halt this Wildcats team?
Go ahead, Spencer.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to run the ball, so it's definitely Darius Taylor. If they do spread out the ball, I think that, other than Athan, I think Daniel Jackson's the guy you got to look at. He's probably the best receiver. There's a lot of great receivers that Athan's surrounded with, but Jackson's been there for a long time, and he's a great receiver. I'd like to see them go deep with him. We failed really to kind of throw him the deep ball, I feel. He caught that miraculous touchdown, against Nebraska the first game of the season, but I'd like to see him maybe go just for a go route and just throw it up and see if he can go up and get it. I think that he's a tremendous athlete. On the defensive side of the ball, like Kurt said, I think up front, that's where it starts. If they can cause disruption, it's going to be really hard for Northwestern to get something going on offense. But I just really like Ja Joyner. I think that he is a great athlete. He's fun to watch. I'm really impressed with the defensive line this year overall. We've been saying for a few years how we'd like to see a little bit more, and I feel like this year we're definitely getting more than we've seen before. So that's where I'll be looking, this Saturday.
Yeah, Spencer stole my X Factor and Ja Joyner there. He's our defensive end, and while he's not up there leading our team in sacks, he's definitely the reason for most of them. He's the one that gets after the passer the most consistently off the edge. So he would be my X Factor on that side of the ball. And then, if I were to go different, I would probably say the O-line for offense, just opening up holes for Darius Taylor, because I think the O-line's going to have a long day in that they'll probably see a lot of loaded boxes. I would guess, maybe you guys feel differently, I would guess that Northwestern's best chance to win this game would be loading up in the box and making Athan beat you, like making him throw over the top. I don't know why you wouldn't. If you guys want to pass it on to your team, I'm sure they know that from watching last week's game. But yeah, so I would guess offensive line basically being able to handle. I'm sure they'll see a lot of stunts, some run blitzes. So yeah, I guess I would go O-line and let's taking 5 people as the X factor, but just their blocking ability would be my X factor for this game. And then we'll flip it back to you. I know you mentioned your O-line struggling, but who's your, I feel like you're going to go with the receiver, maybe just with how you're talking about what is your X factor as far as if the Wildcats are going to pull this off?
Ooh, I want to go with the receiver in AJ Henning, but I'm actually going to go with a defensive player because I think that really the ability to pressure, Athan is going to be really important. Just with kind of his struggles last week and getting to the quarterback being something that we haven't really been able to do successfully the first 3 weeks of the season. So I'm actually going to go with the sophomore Anto Saka. He had a sack last week against Duke. A little bit of an under the radar guy, maybe for the casual Big Ten viewer, but pretty high prospect, and really someone that Northwestern's really excited about, being one of those younger players, but getting really an important role. Primarily the first couple of weeks we've seen him on third downs, really as a third down pass rusher. But in David Brunn's press conference the other day, he said that he really wants to kind of incorporate him more into the regular defense and really get him in there. So I'd see kind of more of a role for him against Minnesota on Saturday, because he's really been the one big success story up front defensively so far this season. So if we're going to be on the defensive side, I'd say him, and then offensively, we just need the playmaking of AJ Henning. Ball in his hands, he's really explosive, and he's someone that can really open up this offense. I don't know if Dylan or Ashleigh have someone else in mind.
Yeah, I would have looked at Anto Saka as well, but I think you can also look defensively at basically the leader of the defense, and that's going to be Bryce Gallagher, our linebacker, leads the team in tackles. He's got to be there to kind of stuff some holes and make some tackles and really limiting that Minnesota run game. And I think he's been pretty good through 3 games, a little bit of a struggle against Duke, but I think he has an opportunity for a big bounce back game here against Minnesota. So I think Bryce Gallagher, and I could say the entire line group team as well, but Bryce Gallagher is my guy to look out for.
Yeah, I was also going to say Bryce Gallagher, AJ Henning. I think the key is really going to be stopping that run game that Minnesota's been emphasizing the past 3 games. But offensively, like Adam said, whenever AJ Henning gets the ball in his hand, it goes somewhere. And I think our key is not necessarily making big plays, like big 20-plus yard gains, because that's not really what we need to get down the field. We just need those first downs. It doesn't matter if it gets down to third down. We just need to be able to inch the ball up the field. I don't think we need to be looking for AJ Henning to make a 40-plus yard catch or whatever, although that would be amazing, and I would love if that happened. But I think AJ Henning's been great with the jet sweeps. I think our running game has not been too bad. But I think AJ Henning is really one of the leaders of this offense, especially with in the wide receiver core. So I think getting the ball to him, he's been really great in picking up yardage. So I'd really want to look out for him.
Nice. Yeah, and if you guys don't have any more, I'll go into my score prediction unless you guys have anything else you want to run past us.
Let's hear it.
All right. So I think it's going to be kind of an ugly game in the sense of the style it's played. I think it's last I saw the spread had moved closer. I think it's opened up at 13. I think it's down to 11.5. I have Gophers winning 23-12. I know it's an ugly score. I just think it's going to be a lot of teams running the football this game. The Gophers, PJ Fleck came out and redefined explosive plays for this team this year of being placed 30 yards or more. This season, we have 0. We have no plays over 30 yards on offense. So I don't anticipate that changing on a night game at Northwestern, where it seems like sometimes you guys let the grass get a little long and harder to be explosive plays being made there. So, and I mean, college players get up for night games. So I'm expecting a feisty, dogfight in the first quarter for sure and a close game throughout. But eventually I just do think that the Gophers this year have the stronger play in the trenches, where I think this game's mainly going to be played. So I went 23-12. I don't know how that score is going to shape out that way. But yeah, I'm going Gophers 23-12.
Yeah, I agree with Kurt. It's not going to be a pretty game. In fact, I think that, I don't know if it'll be, if there'll be a score in the first quarter. The Gophers have yet to score a touchdown in the first quarter. I don't think it happens this game either. And usually when they're knocking on the door, they settle for 3. But in the end, I think that the Gophers get 26 and they win 26-13. Again, it'll be kind of a slow kind of burn of a game. But it'll be classic Big Ten, just running the football, big up front, and just kind of nitty-gritty stuff. So 26-13 Gophers.
I think that the past 2 night games Northwestern's played in at home against Miami of Ohio last year and against Wisconsin last year. I think they played Miami of Ohio.
I know. I'm trying to forget that Miami of Ohio game.
Yeah, those 2 games were some of the worst games I've seen.
Wisconsin was also a 2:30 game.
Oh, it was a 2:30 game?
Yeah.
Oh, it got dark at some point in that game.
It was 35-0. It was dark.
Okay. Anyway, point is, Miami of Ohio didn't go well. And I guess Wisconsin wasn't a night game. It felt like a night game. The cloud cover came, whatever.
I got you.
Point is, I don't really see this Northwestern team kind of having that punch. We didn't see it really last week against Duke. And even in the first half against UTEP, we didn't see it. That score was 7-7 at halftime. So I think Minnesota, they're going to run the ball early. They might try and throw the ball a little bit too, but I think they're really going to run the ball. And I think that they're going to run past Northwestern. And especially if Northwestern isn't able to, tackle, which was a problem last week, I think that Minnesota wins 35-10 and they move on to next week. And it's that simple.
I agree. I think I'm going to have to take Minnesota win. I do think the Northwestern defense has a little bit of a bounce back game, but not big enough to make a true difference in how this game kind of flips. I would take Minnesota to win this one. Probably another weird score, 24-9. I think Northwestern gets 3 field goals. Don't think they find their way in the end zone.
Yeah, for me, I definitely have the Minnesota W for this one. I'm looking at 27-10. I think there are too many holes in this Northwestern defense to really defend against that Minnesota run game. And I know Spencer mentioned that there were not really too many touchdowns in the first quarter so far this season, but I think this is where it's going to happen for Minnesota. I think just because the Northwestern defense is looking really shaky so far this season, that this will give Minnesota a chance to shine.
Well, I like that. That sounds good to me. But, our friends over at the Sully podcast, one of them predicted this even in preseason, and he stuck with it. He doubled down on it today. He picked Northwestern to upset Minnesota, and he thinks that basically this starts a downfall and that PJ Fleck is fired after this year. So at least he's got you guys this game. If someone's gonna, someone's gonna go with you.
I think if there's a Big Ten game to win this year for Northwestern, this is one of those top chances for Northwestern.
Sure. I completely agree with that.
I would agree with that too. It seems, like I said earlier, it seems like this game, even if the Northwestern Wildcats aren't doing so well in the season, it's still a game you can't overlook. You know, it's a sneaky team. They play hard. You know, they can always get you for a win. So it's definitely not one you can overlook.
Well, it was great meeting you guys, and we appreciate you guys doing this crossover episode with us. And we look forward to chatting with you guys later in the season. Best of luck.